Chapter 1. The Day My Sister Turned Pale. The moment my sister saw me walk into her office with a stranger, everything I believed about my family collapsed. She had told me our grandfather was dead, and she had told him I was dead. And in that silence, I understood this was not a misunderstanding. It was a decision she had made years ago. I am your host, and this is the story I never thought I would survive. How my own family erased me, controlled my life, and how quiet revenge finally gave everything back. I knew something was wrong the second I stepped into the office. Not wrong in the way a printer jams or a deal falls apart, but wrong in the way your body reacts before your thoughts catch up. The air felt heavier than usual, like the room had taken a breath and decided not to let it go. My older sister stood near the glass wall of her corner office, tablet tucked under her arm, posture straight and composed. Eleanor Brooks was the kind of woman who controlled everything around her: conversations, timing, money, people. She never slouched, she never hesitated. She never let cracks show. Until she saw who was standing next to me. The color drained from her face so quickly it was almost alarming. One moment she was mid-sentence with an agent, smiling that calm professional smile she had perfected over the years. The next, her skin went pale, tight, unfamiliar. Her eyes flicked from me to the man beside me, then back again. Not confusion, not surprise. Recognition. Her fingers tightened around the tablet. I noticed because Eleanor hated looking tense. Tension was a weakness she trained herself to erase, but this time she missed it. Her knuckles turned white before she realized what she was doing. The office fell quiet in a way it never did. Phones still rang, keyboards still clicked, people kept moving, but the space between us filled with something thick and uneasy, a silence that stretched just long enough to feel wrong. I felt it settle in my chest before I understood it. The man beside me was someone I had just helped less than 20 minutes ago. An older man, tall but slightly stooped, dressed neatly in a gray blazer that looked well cared for, not expensive, intentional. His silver hair was combed back with care. He rested one hand lightly on a cane, more for reassurance than necessity. He turned his head toward my sister and studied her calmly, his blue eyes steady, unblinking. When he spoke, his voice was quiet and measured. "I was under the impression you told your sister I was no longer alive." The words landed without force, but they carried weight. No accusation, no anger, just a statement that cut straight through the room. Eleanor said nothing. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed again. For a split second, I expected her to recover, to do what she always did when things went off script: smooth it over, reframe it, turn confusion into control. But nothing came. Her gaze dropped to the floor for half a heartbeat before snapping back up. In that brief moment, I saw something I had never seen in her eyes before: fear. My stomach tightened. This was not a misunderstanding, not a coincidence, not an awkward overlap of lives that could be brushed away with a quick explanation. This was the reaction of someone whose version of the truth had just been threatened. I glanced around the office. A few people were beginning to look over now, curiosity creeping in. Others deliberately avoided eye contact, pretending to focus on their screens. People at Brooks Realty had learned quickly that curiosity came at a cost. I had learned that too. The man shifted his weight slightly, resting both hands on the top of his cane. He did not raise his voice, he did not repeat himself. He waited. I watched my sister swallow. The silence stretched. I became aware of the low hum of the air conditioning, the faint buzz of overhead lights. My breathing felt shallow, uneven. My mind scrambled for something rational. Maybe she knew him from another deal, another life. Eleanor knew powerful people, wealthy people, people whose stories never made it into polite conversation. But the look on her face told me this was personal. This was old. I looked at the man again. He met my eyes and gave a small, apologetic smile, as if he regretted putting me in the middle of something uncomfortable. There was sadness in his expression too, not fresh grief, but the kind that settles after years of unanswered questions. I had trusted my sister with everything, and she had built her life on that trust. The thought surfaced uninvited, sharp and unsettling. I wanted to ask him what he meant. I wanted to ask Eleanor why she looked like she had just seen a ghost. Instead, I stood still. Eleanor finally spoke, her voice thinner than usual. "I think there has been some confusion." She kept her tone controlled, but the edges were brittle. I recognized it immediately. It was the voice she used when she felt cornered but refused to admit it. The man did not argue. He did not correct him. He looked at her the way someone looks at a person they once knew well, someone they thought they understood. "Confusion tends to clear up when people stop lying," he said. My heart skipped. That was all it took. No raised voices, no dramatic confrontation, just a sentence that settled into the space between us and refused to move. A strange calm washed over me, the kind that comes right before something irreversible. Years of routine and obedience had dulled my instincts, but now they stirred, uneasy and alert. This was not about me bringing a stranger into the office out of politeness. This was about something Eleanor had buried deeply, something she never expected to surface. I watched her shoulders tense just slightly, another tell she usually hid. She adjusted her grip on the tablet, then placed it carefully on the reception desk, as if grounding herself. People were watching now, a few whispers, a few sideways glances. Eleanor noticed immediately. She always noticed. She forced a smile, the professional one, the armor. "Let us take this somewhere private," she said. The man did not move. I did. I took a small step back, suddenly aware where I stood, between them, as if an invisible line had been drawn and I was standing directly on it. "Private," I repeated softly. Eleanor's eyes flicked to me. In them I saw something familiar from long ago, before she learned to hide it. Calculation. That was the moment it clicked. Not the details, not the full story, just the shape of the truth. This reaction was too strong for a simple misunderstanding, too raw, too immediate. People don't look like that unless they're afraid of what someone knows. I did not yet know who the man beside me truly was. I did not know why my sister was afraid of him. But I knew this. Whatever he represented, whatever he had walked into this office carrying with him, it had the power to unravel something Eleanor had spent years protecting. And the fact that she had never prepared me for this possibility told me more than any explanation ever could. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. Before Eleanor could redirect the conversation, before she could dismiss it or reframe it into something safer, I spoke. "I think I deserve to hear this." My voice surprised me, calm, firm, unapologetic. Eleanor looked at me like she was seeing me clearly for the first time in years. The man nodded once. So did I. Because whatever this was, whatever truth had just cracked the surface, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. To understand why my sister was afraid, I would have to go back. Back to the years I trusted her with everything. Back to the version of my life I had never questioned. Back to the moment I handed over control and never thought to ask for it back. And I had no idea how much that trust had already cost me. Chapter 2. The Years I Believed Her. Grief does not arrive as a single moment. It moves quietly and rearranges everything before you realize you have lost your footing. In the spring of 2012, when I was 19, our parents died within weeks of each other. One accident, one hospital room, one hallway that smelled like disinfectant and bad news. I remember standing there while doctors spoke in careful voices, their words sliding past me without meaning, while my older sister Vivian asked questions and took notes like she was managing a project. She did not cry in front of anyone. She did not hesitate. She stood straight and steady, thanking people when they were finished explaining things. Watching her gave me a strange sense of relief. Someone knew what to do. Someone was strong enough to hold everything together. I was not. The days that followed blurred into a long, dull ache. Funeral arrangements, paperwork, condolences that felt heavy and repetitive. I slept in fragments and woke up confused, forgetting for a moment why the house felt so empty. Food lost its taste. Time stopped behaving the way it used to. Whenever someone turned toward me with a question, Vivian stepped in. "You do not need to worry about that," she said, her hand resting lightly on my arm. "I have it handled." At first, I'd tried to participate, weakly. "Should I talk to a lawyer?" I asked once. She smiled gently and shook her head. "It's already taken care of. Trust me." And I did. A few weeks later, we sat at the dining table in our parents' house. Morning light filtered through the curtains, catching dust in the air. A neat stack of papers sat between us. Vivian slid a thin folder toward me. "There was not much left," she said. "Medical bills, taxes, the mortgage. People underestimate how fast everything disappears. This is what you are entitled to." Inside was a check and a short summary. The amount felt small, but I had no reference point. I didn't know what estates were supposed to look like. I didn't know what questions to ask. I trusted her. "Sign here," she said softly. "I'll take care of the rest." My hand shook as I signed, not because I doubted her, but because everything still hurt. That moment didn't feel like losing something, it felt like surviving. After that, life moved forward, or at least Vivian did. The house was sold, my parents' belongings disappeared into boxes and storage units I never visited. Vivian returned to work and poured herself into building her real estate business. I drifted. I tried to go back to school that fall, but my concentration was broken. Bills kept arriving. Rent was due every month, indifferent to grief. Vivian helped when she could, or at least that was how it was framed. "If you are short this month, tell me," she said. "We're family." Her help always came with reassurance, but also with quiet reminders of how much she was doing for me. About a year later, she offered me a job. Her company had grown enough to need administrative support, phones, scheduling, paperwork. It made sense. She was successful. I needed stability. "It's not a lot," she admitted, naming a salary that barely covered my expenses, "but it's steady. You can work your way up." I accepted without negotiating. Gratitude has a way of making you feel undeserving of more. My days fell into routine, answering calls, filing documents, scheduling showings, watching Vivian close deals and expand the business. She seemed energized by growth, by momentum. I became invisible inside it. Every so often, life reminded me how fragile my position was. My car needed repairs. A medical bill appeared without warning. Each time I stood outside her office door longer than necessary, rehearsing my words. "I hate to ask," I would begin. She would sigh softly, already reaching for her purse. "I can help you this time," she said, "but you have to be more careful. I cannot always fix things for you." The help always came wrapped in caution, in reminders of how much she had already done, of how easily she could stop. Once, when I asked for a small advance on my paycheck, she leaned back in her chair and studied me. "You know I didn't have to give you this job, right?" My face burned. I nodded. "I'm just saying," she continued, "you wouldn't be where you are without me." I thanked her. I always did. Looking back, I learned to confuse survival with loyalty. Years passed quietly, predictably. I learned how to shrink my needs, how to avoid questions, how to tell myself this was just how adulthood worked. Whenever doubt surfaced, I pushed it down. "I'm probably just bad with money," I told myself. Vivian never seemed to be. She upgraded offices, drove newer cars, talked casually about investments and expansion. I watched her sign contracts behind glass walls while I checked my bank balance on my phone and calculated groceries. The contrast made me uncomfortable, but discomfort felt familiar, manageable. There were moments that unsettled me, small ones: a document I didn't recognize, a client name that felt oddly familiar. Once I overheard her on the phone, her voice low and sharp. "No, she does not need to know that. It's already taken care of." When she noticed me standing there, she smiled easily. "Work call," she said. I didn't ask questions. Trust teaches you where not to look. By the time my car finally stopped working for good, I was in my early 30s, and still living as if life was waiting to begin. That morning, standing at the bus stop with my bag over my shoulder and my account balance flashing red on my phone, I told myself it was temporary, just another inconvenience. I didn't yet understand that this small disruption was about to pull at a thread I had never questioned, and that once it did, nothing would stay hidden long. Chapter 3: The Kindness That Opened the Door. The morning felt ordinary in the way most important mornings do. I stood at the bus stop with my bag over one shoulder, eyes unfocused, my thoughts circling the same problems I had been carrying for years. The car was done for, my account was nearly empty. I was tired in a quiet, familiar way, the kind that no longer surprises you. The bus arrived late, doors opened, people moved forward without speaking. That was when I noticed him. He stood just behind me, tall but careful, one hand resting on a cane. He was not frail, only deliberate, like someone who had learned to move slowly because the world no longer waited. His coat was clean, his shoes polished, his presence easy to overlook. When the line shifted, he hesitated. I turned instinctively. "You can go ahead." He smiled, surprised. "Thank you. These steps feel higher every year." I took his arm as he climbed aboard. His grip was light, steady, apologetic. Inside, he chose a seat near the front. I moved past him, but he looked up again. "You heading to work?" he asked. "Yes, downtown." He nodded. "Same direction." I sat across the aisle. The bus rolled forward, the city sliding by in dull streaks. Silence settled between us, comfortable. "You look tired," he said after a moment. "I am," I admitted. He smiled gently. I remember that feeling. There was nothing invasive about him, no pity, no curiosity disguised as concern, just quiet companionship. After a few stops, he spoke again. "What do you do?" "Administrative work, real estate." "Busy field," he said. "It keeps us moving." "Growth always does," he replied. "It hides a lot." I did not know why that sentence stayed with me. We talked about small things after that: weather, traffic, how much the city had changed. He mentioned living alone now, most of the people he knew gone or scattered. "You get used to the quiet," he said, "even when you do not want to." When the bus slowed near my stop, I stood. "This is me." "So soon?" he asked. "Unfortunately." He hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Would you mind showing me where you work?" I paused. "My office?" "I have not been downtown in years," he said. "You mentioned real estate." There was no expectation in his voice. I checked the time. I was already late. "It is close, if you're up for a short walk." "I would appreciate that," he said. We stepped off together. He walked slower than I did, but steady. As we crossed the street, he asked the name of the company. Brooks Realty. He stopped for half a second. Brooks Realty, he repeated. You know it? Perhaps, or perhaps I know someone connected to it. I laughed lightly. Most people did. Inside the building, the office buzzed with voices and ringing phones. Agents moved quickly, coffee cups in hand. He looked around with quiet interest. Your company? He asked. My sister runs it. We stepped inside. Vivian stood near the glass wall of her office, mid-conversation. She turned, ready to redirect another interruption. Then she saw us. The color drained from her face so quickly it startled me. Her eyes locked on the man beside me, then flicked to me, then away. The man straightened, his grip tightening on his cane. So this is where you've been, he said, his voice steady but strained. Vivian swallowed. Arthur. Hearing his name made something tighten in my chest. You told me your sister was gone, he said, his voice steady but strained. You told me she died years ago. The words hit me before I understood them. Arthur turned to me. I thought you were dead. What? I whispered. I believed her, he said. I mourned you. I was told you were buried. I visited the place they said was your grave. My heart slammed against my ribs. She told me you were gone, I said, that you passed away before I could remember you. Two lies, running side by side for years. I looked at Vivian. She did not deny it. She did not explain. Her eyes dropped, then slid away. She did not erase me by accident. She erased me on purpose. The realization landed with cold clarity. Vivian, I said quietly, say something. She shook her head once. This is not the place. Arthur exhaled slowly. How long? He asked. She did not answer. I did not scream. I did not cry. I stood there, numb and sharply aware at the same time. This was not confusion. This was not protection gone wrong. This was deliberate. Arthur reached for my arm, hesitant. I'm so sorry, he said. I would have found you sooner if I had known. I nodded without knowing what I was agreeing to. People were watching now, whispering. Vivian straightened her jacket, trying to regain control. We should talk privately. Arthur did not move. Neither did I. Something settled inside me then, not anger, not yet, something steadier. I need time. I need the truth. And for the first time I understood that the truth would not come without consequences. Chapter 4. The Truth Had Receipts. I did not wake up angry the next morning. I woke up methodical. The truth had stopped feeling emotional and started feeling procedural, which somehow scared me more. Arthur and I met Lydia Grant a week later in her office downtown, a quiet place with tall bookshelves and a window that looked out onto a parking lot instead of the skyline. Lydia was in her late 40s, composed in a way that did not rush sympathy or soften reality. She listened without interrupting as Arthur spoke, his hands folded, his voice steady but tired. When he finished, Lydia looked at me. You did the right thing coming here, she said. What you are describing is not a family issue, it is a legal one. She leaned back slightly, choosing her words. Probate is the process that settles an estate after someone dies, she explained. It determines who has authority, who inherits, and under what conditions. When that process is interfered with, people can disappear without ever leaving a trace. Arthur shifted in his chair. I was told everything was handled, he said, that there was nothing left. Lydia nodded. That is often what people are told. She asked for documents, anything we had. Arthur reached into a worn envelope and pulled out folded letters, bank statements, copies of a will. Lydia spread them out carefully, scanning each page. This will was amended multiple times, she said, years after your son's death. Arthur frowned. I never requested that. I know, Lydia replied. She paused longer over one page, her eyes narrowing slightly. "This signature," she said, tapping the paper, "is notarized, but the notary listed here stopped practicing before this date." The room went still. "That suggests notary fraud," she continued. "Combined with this, it points toward misuse of power of attorney." I swallowed. "Power of attorney?" "It allows someone to act on another person's behalf," she said. "It is meant to protect people who cannot protect themselves, but it can be weaponized." Arthur looked down at his hands. "I trusted her," he said quietly. She said she was helping." Lydia leaned forward. "Trust is often the entry point." Over the next several days, Lydia and her team began pulling records, bank transfers, property deeds, trust filings. Each discovery echoed the last, the same structure, the same timing. It was not just Arthur, an elderly widow who had given temporary financial authority after surgery, a retired man whose niece had managed his accounts during a hospital stay. Different names, same pattern: isolation, assistance, control. Each story mirrored a fear I recognized: being tired, being alone, wanting someone else to take responsibility. Arthur spoke again one afternoon, his voice quieter than before. "I thought I deserved the loneliness," he said. "I believed my family was gone because I failed them." Vivian had appeared during that time, he told us. She checked in, brought groceries, handled paperwork he did not understand anymore. "She said it was easier if she took care of things," he said. I was relieved. Lydia nodded. "That is elder exploitation," she said. "It often looks like kindness." Then came the receipt. Lydia called us back into her office late one afternoon. She placed a single folder on the desk, sliding it toward us. "This is what changes everything," she said. Inside was a conservatorship filing granting control over Arthur's finances to Vivian. The signature authorizing it was his name, but it was not his handwriting. Arthur stared at it, confusion crossing his face. "I did not sign that." Lydia nodded. "Medical records show you were deemed temporarily incompetent at the time, and the witness listed here does not exist." Arthur closed his eyes. "This confirms fraud," Lydia said. "It also establishes a pattern. This is no longer about one family." It was bigger than one betrayal. It was a system that fed on trust. I felt the scale of it settle in. This was not just my story anymore. It was a warning written in paperwork. "What happens now?" I asked. Lydia met my eyes. "Now we proceed quietly. These cases are strongest when the person responsible does not know the investigation has begun." Arthur hesitated. "I do not want her to panic or destroy evidence." "Then you act normal," Lydia replied. She explained the next steps: reports to Adult Protective Services, referral to the district attorney, forensic review of accounts. It would take time and silence. That evening, I returned to work like nothing had changed. I answered phones, filed documents, watched Vivian move through the office with her usual confidence. She smiled at me once. "You've been quiet lately," she said. I smiled back. "Just tired." In my bag was a copy of the conservatorship filing, proof, receipts. For the first time, the truth was no longer something she controlled, and what I didn't know yet was how long she had been preparing for this moment, too. Chapter 5. What She Lost and What I Got Back. The knock came early, on a Tuesday morning that looked no different from the ones before it. I was already awake, sitting at the small kitchen table with a cup of coffee I had not touched, staring at the wall while my phone lay face down beside me. Waiting had become a skill. Not hopeful waiting, not anxious waiting, just the kind that settles into your bones when you know something is coming and you cannot hurry it. When the knock came again, firmer this time, I knew it was not for me. I watched from the window as two officers stood on the sidewalk outside Vivian Building. They were calm, professional, almost gentle in the way they waited. One checked a folder, the other glanced at the door as if measuring time. It took longer than I expected. Later, I learned she had tried to call her attorney first. By noon, everything moved quickly. Accounts were frozen, Offices were sealed. Files were boxed and carried out without ceremony. The company she had built so carefully went quiet in a matter of hours. There was no shouting, no dramatic confrontation, just the sound of control slipping away. Arthur called me that afternoon. His voice was steadier than it had been in years. "They confirmed it," he said. "All of it. Forgery, fraud, exploitation." The words sounded clinical when he said them, stripped of emotion, stripped of the power they once had over us. "They are pressing charges," he added, "more than one case." It turned out there were more victims than we ever knew. Older clients, family members of former clients, people who had trusted someone who looked capable and organized and helpful. Vivian had not crossed a line by accident. She had built a system around it. The trial came months later. I attended only part of it, not because I was afraid to face her, but because I no longer needed to. I listened to testimony that echoed what we had already uncovered. I watched strangers describe the same pattern of kindness turning into control, of help becoming leverage. When Vivian finally looked at me across the room, there was no apology in her eyes, no regret. There was only disbelief. She lost everything she had used to define herself, the authority she exercised without question, the money that gave her leverage, the reputation that had protected her for years. Most of all, she lost the ability to decide who mattered and who did not. That loss did not arrive loudly. It arrived in court orders, in locked accounts, in doors that no longer opened for her. I did not feel satisfied. What I felt instead was something quieter. Silence. The kind that does not demand anything from you. Arthur moved into a smaller place closer to town. We had dinner together on Sundays sometimes, sitting at a table that felt warmer than the ones we had known before. At first, he apologized often, for believing the lie, for not looking harder, for losing time he could never get back. I stopped him eventually. "You were lied to," I said. "That is not a failure." He nodded, slowly learning to accept that. The restitution process took time, but it worked. Money was returned, records were corrected, my name was restored where it had once been erased. But what mattered most was not what came back on paper. It was what I no longer carried. For the first time, my life belonged to me again. I no longer flinched when my phone rang. I no longer measured my worth by someone else's approval. I no longer felt obligated to soften my boundaries to make other people comfortable. When Vivian tried to reach me once, months later, through a third party, I declined without hesitation. Not out of anger, out of clarity. Forgiveness was never something I owed her, and silence was the boundary that finally protected me. Life did not become perfect after that. It became honest. I chose work that belonged to me. I made decisions without asking permission. I learned the difference between support and control, between loyalty and fear. Some mornings were still quiet, but the quiet no longer felt heavy. It felt open, spacious, safe. If you are listening to this and recognize yourself somewhere in it, if you have ever been made smaller by someone who claimed to love you, you are not imagining it, and you are not alone. If you feel comfortable, share your story in the comments. Sometimes the first step towards justice is realizing that what happened to you has a name, and that other people have survived it too. Justice does not always arrive quickly, but when it does, it is thorough. And the most lasting form of revenge is not noise or destruction. It is the quiet life you build once control is gone.